is Mark Troller. I'm with the Rutgers class of 2013 in their Executive MBA program. This past June, I was able to join my classmates on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to China. We went to the capital, Beijing, and we also went to the city of Singapore. During this trip, we went to several companies to partake in different discussions and presentations on how we do business in China. And we also went to several cultural events. And today I'm going to give you a presentation and talk about some of these events. I'm going to try and give you a personal perspective, focus on three main takeaways from each area. So when we first arrived at Beijing, I was relieved to see that the airport was as big and as modern as anything I've seen in the United States, if not bigger or more impressive. Of course, they scaled it up for the 2008 Olympics a few years ago. Also, the roadways were modern. They were very well taken care of. When you got into the city, I was expecting to see a ton of traffic everywhere, but I don't think it was too bad. Quite frankly, I commute in New York City every day, and I think it's been worse there. So as far as my expectations, I would say my first impression of Beijing, my impressions were met. The next thing I might have really noticed that this was not what I expected. You saw video cameras in many places in public areas, especially on signposts and buildings. You never saw a lot of police, but you were definitely being watched through technology and cameras. You never felt like you were somewhere, you felt safe because you were being watched, but you didn't know what you were being watched for. And being an American citizen, maybe that made you feel a little uncomfortable. The other thing I noticed in Beijing, people looked at me a little strange. I'm 6'4", I'm a big guy. A lot of people would look at me, and I tend to like to make eye contact. When I looked back at people and made the same eye contact, they immediately turned away and looked down at the ground. And I've noticed it repeatedly. I told some friends, they also noticed people were doing this when they were walking by. So I asked a few people from China why they do this, and I could never get a straight answer. There was a lot of odd responses. One person actually said, I look strange to them and they don't know how to react to me. So, I just smiled and went about my business. Starting our China experience with a tour of Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City seemed appropriate as they were located in the heart of Beijing. The first thing you notice is the size and grandeur of all the buildings. They signified the power and strength of China as a world leader. Although the square was filled with tourists, there was still a militant feel about the area, as the Chinese police were often seen walking through the area as a sign of the power and control. Upon entering the Forbidden City, I became somewhat overwhelmed by its size. Just as you thought you were close to exiting the city, you learned that there was yet another section to cross. At the end of the day, it was clear that Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City symbolized China's power in the world, the control over its citizens, and the fact that everything was done by the design of their leaders. After a long day of walking around Tiananmen Square in the Forbidden City, I was starving. I was looking forward to going for our first authentic dinner in China. And we went to I think it's the Peking Duck House. I wasn't surprised by the Lazy Susan style, because we were told that that's how we were going to be eating. But I was very surprised when so many dishes came out that I couldn't identify. And even when I was told what they were, I couldn't believe it. The bowl of mushrooms did not look like any mushroom I had ever seen. I will say, I tried something from every dish, and it was a small amount, but I didn't go back for seconds. I'm a big guy with a big appetite, but I really didn't care for that food. I will say this though, the beer in China was terrific. Tsingtao was very good. I drank that the entire time, and I'll drink that for the rest of my life. That was actually a pleasure. And the wine at dinner, that also was not very good. I would say that's in line with the food. But the best part of that whole meal and the experience, I thought the entertainment during the course of dinner was just wonderful. Those are great pictures. It kept me very entertaining. All in around, it was a fun night. I had plenty of beer to fill my stomach, not so much the food. The entertainment kept me going, and of course I was with great friends. Coming here today, I was really expecting to see something magnificent, something along the lines of what I've seen at the Hoover Dam and maybe Niagara Falls, and being equally impressed. And I have to say, this is fantastic. What an engineering marvel. To think 300,000 people to build this over so many years ago They didn't have technology or project plans or any of the tools that we have at our disposal, so it's incredibly impressive. For an REMBA to come up here and just see what leadership can do and what they can produce is truly inspiring. After the Great Wall, we went to the pro market, and it wasn't exactly what I expected. I was really expecting a lot of good deals. What I really saw, honestly, was floor and floor just filled and packed with junk and people getting ripped off. I really couldn't believe how so many of my intelligent classmates were so happy to throw away hundreds and hundreds of dollars on just junk that are going to just break soon enough. I did manage when we got to Shanghai. I picked up some toy helicopters for my kids. One didn't work, one broke the day I got home, one lasted 2 days. It was all junk. I wasted probably $40 American money. At least I got a gift, but I'll tell you, this pro market, what a scam. Maybe people who know where to get the quality items and the best prices, good for them, God bless you. Go and shop there all you need. I don't know enough to find the deals or find quality items there, but to me that place was just a lot of junk. So our first full day in China, we had started with presentations at the hotel. And one general comment about all of the presentations and all of the companies in China, one thing I felt is the REMBA program focuses a great deal in China. Whether it's microeconomics, macroeconomics, whether it's international business, China keeps coming up as case studies and examples, and they're in the news constantly. So I feel a lot of the information provided through the lectures was really supporting what we already knew. And I asked myself at times, why do we fly all the way here just to hear the same presentations we could have heard back in the US? But looking deeper, there's definitely certain things you can extract from the presentation that aren't covered in Rutgers. For example, in our first meeting in China, we had an overview of Chinese economic, political, and business environment. And the speaker talked a lot about Airbus and they're transitioning to doing business in China. Basically, China is growing so fast and their infrastructure needs to grow along with it. The Airbus has found a great opportunity to come there, manufacture planes, and sell them to the government in all the various airports. However, digging deeper into the conversation, the speaker mentioned some key things. That the company is not very creative and they don't look to foster innovation. They're much more into copying technology and focus a lot more on the branding. The Chinese are very attracted to the brands. One other example is the speaker made a reference to a term, the government, by controlling the amount of food they make available to the people. And actually, this is not something we'd really talk about in American business and would even think of bringing it up in front of my HR representatives. But apparently, the people in China don't like chaos. They actually would prefer that level of control. Everyone that feeling of being safe and being taken care of. But one philosophical point the speaker made that really resonated to me, was that to do business in China successfully, you have to come to China, make friends, then expect to lose money because your friends are going to take that money from you. And then after you lose your money to your friends, then you can begin making money in China. The second guest speaker that day in Beijing was a gentleman from Baidu. He was there to speak about internet security within China. Being a career IT professional, I was really interested in that presentation because every day we have to focus on protecting and securing our data for our customers and our citizens. The first thing I thought was really odd was he was giving a very candid presentation. As soon as he saw that somebody had a camera actually videotaping him, he completely shut down and started giving us more of a demo of their search engine. And there's a lot of differences between that search engine and what we have here, in the States as far as Google or Bing. But I wasn't expecting to go to China to see a presentation on a search engine. Things about the internet in China that we kind of already knew. We know that the government monitors it. They're actually trying to squash rumors and see what's going on with their citizens. They want to do what they can to keep them under control and minimize chaos. Piracy is a big issue on the internet in China as well. Same in the US, but to a greater extent in China, at least from the perception that I got from the presentation. And third, regarding marketing on the internet in China, they actually sell brand names back to those companies that own the brands. So just because you're a brand owner doesn't give you the rights to sell it on the internet unless you've purchased it from Baidu themselves. I don't think there's a big difference between the internet from China and the US and how it operates. But since China keeps this wall around it and keeps your citizens basically internal to their own internet, it just helps the government control what information the people get to see. Instead of calling it the World Wide Web in China, it would probably just be called the China Wide Web. At the end of day 4, we went to the Peking Opera House. Now that was a totally new experience for me. Professor Kerman warned me that the sounds of the opera are harsh and you'll be inclined to laugh, but to really resist not to. And I was doing well. But then I saw my classmates starting to giggle, and I couldn't help myself and I laughed too. And I felt bad about that. What I realized from that experience is that if I'm doing business with folks in other cultures and I can't control myself and I laugh at something I shouldn't, it would be extremely offensive to those people. And if I'm doing a business deal, I would have just killed the deal that night. So that's the main takeaway from that evening for me. However, 2 other items. I did appreciate the music, the costumes, the pageantry. It was all very, very impressive. And the other thing I noticed is that the Chinese citizens that were there actually viewing the performance, they don't smile, they don't applaud for the performers. It's as if the performers are there to work and serve them, and that those attendees paid good money and they should get a good show. But no applauding, no smiling. I thought that was very strange behavior because it's very different from how we experience it in the US. So on day 5, we transferred to Shanghai. And I think everybody was looking forward to it. We spent enough time in Beijing. Beijing was very formal. You could tell it was a capital city. But Shanghai has the reputation of being more like New York City, maybe a little more fun. And we were certainly ready to have a little more fun. So we went for lunch at Yuan Gardens. And that was much more in line with what I was expecting when I go to China. The gardens, the buildings, the scenery, the flowers. In my mind, I felt like I was finally seeing something that was meeting my expectations. We had lunch there first before the gardens. And I have to say, this was my second experience at a Lazy Susan meal. And this one was better. I actually found some more things that I actually enjoyed. I tried a dish. I didn't know what it was, but it looked okay. Turned out it was jellyfish. It didn't taste okay going down, but now I can tell everyone I had jellyfish. That was quite an experience. And then we walked through the gardens, as I said, and very pleasurable walk. It was nice and cool, very touristy. And then when you came out of the gardens, we got to go to a small shopping area. For the most part, they were selling the same type of goods that I had seen in the Pearl Market, where I wasn't really impressed. But the people here were nicer. They weren't as pushy. I don't think you were saving any more money here, getting better deals or better quality. Probably still getting ripped off to some extent, but the people were much, much nicer about it. All in all, it was one of my more memorable afternoons on the trip, and it was really a great experience seeing the gardens when first getting to Shanghai. So our first company visit in Shanghai was to Kodak. Kodak is clearly a name that I'm very familiar with. Since childhood, my parents always had Kodak cameras and film, but over the years, as digital photography took hold of its industry, Kodak really has lost their position. In fact, they filed Chapter 11. They're trying to sell patents just to stay alive. Speaking to the presenter, who I believe was the chief operating officer, or I'm sorry, was the operations manager of that particular plant, and I asked, what type of innovative solutions are you coming out with to compete and regain your place in the industry? And he didn't know. He was really just focusing on living day to day, managing the staff, trying to retain his staff. They actually have a huge attrition problem. As companies are growing and China expands, they really have a need for senior managers and leaders. And that's where there's shortages. So people are taking jobs and leaving within 6 to 9 months for significant raises. And Kodak, because it's not doing so well, they're not able to attract and keep that kind of talent. So they're really having a problem there, in addition to sales being down and Chapter 11. They painted a pretty dismal story for the future of Kodak. But they did reiterate a couple of things that were, from their perception, what are important to doing business in China. He said that labor costs are going down in China and that employees are actually trying to organize themselves and align themselves with government officials to get help in this matter. Sounds like unionizing to me. That's something I never thought I would hear about in China. And he did spend a little bit of time speaking about his supply chain. Given that they don't have a tremendous amount of upward growth in their sales, they're really trying to focus on savings and cost savings in their supply chain, which resonates very closely to what we're learning in the REMBA program. So I chose to take the plant visit to Lenovo. And before that trip, I always thought of Lenovo as a B-rate player in the PC industry. You know, to me, the top players were HP, they were Dell, IBM. Of course, IBM sold their ThinkPad to Lenovo. I've had ThinkPads in the past. I didn't think very highly of them. So I'm not sure what I was going to get out of this presentation going in, but because I'm an IT career professional, that seemed to make more sense for me. I thought it was strange. The presenter talked a lot about his girlfriends and his motorcycles and actually his Apple devices that he owns. But then he got more into talking about their technology and what their strategy is. Lenovo has made a major push to start expanding their product lines. They're going into tablets and handheld devices as well as the PC and laptops. They're making a big marketing drive as well to improve on the 4 Ps and start going to countries where they haven't had a presence before. At the time of this presentation, they were in 9 countries. Not too bad for a B-level supplier. They also focus on upgrading products for appearance. In China, bling sells. So they did a deal with Swarovski crystals and they put crystals all over a PC, made it very expensive. It's very impractical for any IT professional, but apparently it was a big seller in China. They made a lot of money off this. So they're actually becoming an A-level player, which I wasn't aware of. When I came back from China, I was starting a new job and I got to pick a new PC. So I chose a Lenovo to give them a shot. So they actually got 1 sale out of me as a result of this presentation. So although I had low expectations of the company going in, I came out where now I was willing to give them a shot. And since I'm somebody who makes purchasing decisions for IT, this presentation might have actually proved beneficial for Lenovo in the long run. Now our presentation at TWBA was actually a little different than the rest. This was the first company to really talk about creativity. A lot of the other presentations were about regulations and controls and how difficult it is to do business in China. But TBWA actually focuses on marketing, and they've supported products and events such as the Olympics and Coke and McDonald's. And those are all names that we know about, but really didn't understand that this company was behind the marketing aspects of it. One thing they made very clear is that 15 years ago, there was no marketing in China. So now they found out how truly effective marketing really is. And they stated, if you're not improving 20% year over year in China, you're clearly doing something wrong. Their strategy in marketing is to look at a product and think how it correlates to, if it was a person, what would its core value be? And in terms of products, well, that would be brand value. So they look at that value and they spend a lot of time finding out what a certain product's value is. So for instance, they would define a scotch as being an elegant scotch, and then they would advertise that to men, saying elegant drinkers drink this scotch. So you would identify yourself as being elegant, the scotch is elegant, and the sales for that product went through the roof. Also for McDonald's, they came up with a campaign, real men eat beef. So being a real man was really the core value. Actually, we all know Chinese aren't really crazy about beef. So this was a big challenge. But they put out this campaign trying to get the Chinese men to correlate themselves. If you want to be a real man, you have to have this. You have to have beef. And because of the Chinese culture, who really are susceptible to big name and big brands, this campaign was also a huge success. The mayor's shipping presentation was kind of polarizing from some respect. On one side, it was very impressive to drive out across the 17-kilometer bridge, see what they did to this small fishing island, how much infrastructure they put there, how many ships come in, how many containers, how much goods come through that port in and out every day, how vital that must be to the Chinese economy. But the whole time going there, all you see is brown water. You see what they've done to pollute the water, what they're doing to their ecosystem. On one hand, they're helping the company grow economically. On the other hand, they're destroying natural resources. You really, where did they make that decision of what's right for the country versus what's wrong? As much as you could be impressed from this presentation on what they've accomplished or what Maersk has done to help grow China and grow the success of their economy, you know, what they've done in the waterways leading out to this particular island is irreversible. And this then tends to be a trend, not just with Maersk and what they've done, but also other areas of China, which is becoming getting much more recognition across the country. So if China doesn't do something about and set some policies to try and reverse some of the pollution that they've started, they're going to be, they're not only going to affect their own ecosystem, but the global ecosystem as well. So the last presentation in the week wrapped up in our hotel. We met with two expats, Antonino and Eve. They spent the last 2 years working in Shanghai. They spoke to us about what some of the advantages and disadvantages are of being an expat. First thing is, there's a big demand for expats in Chinese companies, and they're paying very well. They command high salaries, which allows them to afford nannies and maids and drivers, so they have a high quality of life and live in some very nice apartments. Also, if you have children, it can cost upwards of $100,000 per year to send them to a Western-type school. But that's okay because they said employers are willing to pay for your child's education for you to relocate. They painted a pretty positive picture. It's almost as if they were trying to convince you and recruit you to come. So when you left that presentation, you felt pretty good about what you heard. All I could say is after the experience and even listening to them, I'm not typically interested in relocating my family to China. I hope that doesn't, or anywhere else across the world, frankly. I've grown up in the US, I've been located in New Jersey, my family's here. Chances are that's where I'm going to remain. So at least though as a professional, I understand what it takes to be an expat, such that if I'm in a position to send some of my employees overseas, I can give them have a good conversation with them with what to expect with that lifestyle. On the second to last night in Shanghai, we went to go see the Shanghai Acrobats. It was a great show. I've seen these tricks before in various circuses or maybe a Cirque du Soleil, but this is where it all originates from. A 5,000-year-old culture has actually cultivated all these tricks that they were putting on today. Maybe they're not all 5,000 years old, but it's definitely, this is the heritage where this type of performance comes from. One thing that amazed me in the audience, very similar to the opera, the Chinese citizens who were there to enjoy the show, they didn't appear to be enjoying it. Their faces were very deadpan. No one was smiling, there was no applauding. The Rutgers folks, we were cheering, we were clapping, we were laughing. What a good time. So that's a big difference between our cultures. The Americans were there to be entertained and to reward the entertainment with our applause. The Chinese expected those performers to work for them and do what they were paid to do and to do it well. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway. Also that night, the group of the REMBA students went out to some local pubs and bars and had a good time, but we ended up at a karaoke bar, and I thought I should mention that. That's something, you know, very, very traditional within the Asian community. We typically, if you see karaoke here, it's one karaoke machine and one bar, and it's very late and someone's singing badly. But in Shanghai, the karaoke facility actually had floor after floor, almost like a department store, with a lot of small rooms, various sizes, and everybody was there and having a great time and singing away behind closed doors. I did it. I sang a couple of songs myself just because I wanted the experience. I wanted to say I went to China and I sang karaoke, and I'm not sure how good or bad, but I had a lot of fun singing with my classmates. Our afternoon trip to Hangzhou was a great example of how an executive in Shanghai might spend a weekend with their family. We started with a high-speed bullet train ride for about 45 minutes and took us well over 100 miles, reaching speeds of I think approximately 200 to 300 kilometers per hour. I've never been on a train that fast. It was extremely comfortable and smooth. Good example of the use of modern technology. We had a great walk along the lake. Once again, I saw a lot of the traditional architecture that I was expecting to see in China. Enjoyed the lakes, the boat ride, ultimately getting to another Lazy Susan type lunch. This is the third one that we've had now, and I have to say, this time I was enjoying it more. I went back for seconds, and maybe I'm coming around on the Lazy Susan Chinese meals, because I actually do remember enjoying that one as well. One of the big key takeaways from that trip is time management skills. We did not watch ourselves very closely. Some people got back late to the bus. We had to sprint to make that train coming back. If we missed that, we would have been in trouble waiting for the next one. So one thing you got to really point out to future EMBAs, not just in your careers, but all aspects, time management is critical. So in addition to all the planned events, there was a lot of free time, and we got to go see both Beijing and Shanghai. So I thought I'd mention a couple of takeaways from each of those cities that were more off our schedule and more personal experiences. I will never forget, not just the sight, but the smell of the outdoor food market up the street from our hotel. I'll never forget all the video cameras in the public areas. No matter where you went, you felt like somebody was watching. The thing about Beijing, you know, from arriving at the airport to Tiananmen Square to the Forbidden City, everything was big, it was huge, it was impressive. They're clearly trying to signify that Beijing represents power. I enjoyed the Shanghai skyline. I have seen that in so many movies. Big and colorful. I regret that the skies weren't clear so I could have a more vivid memory. And of course, I'll never forget our last night dinner up on the rooftop overlooking everything. That was just a wonderful experience with my classmates and my peers and my professors and our guests, and I'll cherish that memory always. As a result of this once-in-a-lifetime adventure to China with my REMBA classmates, I now feel I'm more confident that if I was to do business with Chinese companies or to China or to possibly even other foreign countries, I'm in a much better position. I'm ready to accept other cultures. I know you have to do research and understand their government, their restrictions, their regulations. I know that in China you have to, if you want to enter into the business, joint ventures are the way to go. I know if you want to market something within China, brand recognition is key, and marketing is a very powerful tool because marketing has only been used in China over the last 15 years, and companies like Lenovo and TBWA and Ford have all been very, very successful in those marketing endeavors. I've learned that the expat life is not for me. A maybe week or two business trip is something I'm in a much better position to do now as part of my professional career. I've learned that enjoying the culture, and whether it be the food or the entertainment or the people, you know, it's going to be different wherever you go. Now better prepared to re-engage the Chinese culture if I was to ever return. I will always have the memory of going to that Great Wall. I think my favorite picture is the one that I've actually put of me up on Facebook, where I have the epic view of the wall behind me with my face in my profile. Typically on LinkedIn, people use their professional photo for their LinkedIn photo. I put the one of myself on the Great Wall on LinkedIn. I like showing other employers, other students, other colleagues, that I've been there and I've had that experience. Maybe that's something that would be attractive to a potential future employer. But looking at the Great Wall, you know, I don't think of it as a touristy area. I think of the Great Wall as an example of what hundreds of years of leadership, project management, hard work, what you can accomplish. Very similar to the MBA. The MBA is only a 20-month program. It seems like it's taken forever, and I can't wait to graduate next May. But with the proper planning and the work, you put the effort in, You get that degree in the end. It's nothing as substantial as the Great Wall, but the Great Wall just serves as that symbol that we should all be striving for. I would like to thank Professors Louis Kerman and Farouk Langdana for putting this together. You've really set our expectations high on the China trip throughout our first year of the REMBA program, and I have to say we weren't misled. This was a phenomenal experience. We went away as friends, we came back as family, we learned so much. You guys really, really are the best. You did a terrific job. Thank you, and we'll never forget you. Hey, Diddy, I'm done. I did pretty good. Wasn't that